Okay, welcome back. Next sunglass set. We're putting on our differently colored sunglasses, and we're going to ask you these two questions to demonstrate that you implicitly know a little bit about this next perspective. Number one, your 7-year-old son is throwing rocks at the family pet. You've warned him, you've lectured him to stop. If he doesn't stop, what action would you take? A, lecture him again. B, beg him not to do it. Or C, punish him by sending him to his room or taking away his cell phone. Most of you would say C, you would punish him. Which means you implicitly understand that if somebody's doing something and you don't want them to do it anymore, an effective way is to cause him or her some form of physical or emotional pain. I'm disappointed in you. Go to your room. Give me your cell phone. I'm not going to spend time with you anymore. Number two, your professor wants you to study. What would be the best way for him or her to ensure that you do? A, lecture you on the merits of hard work. B, beg you. Or C, reward you with $15 for every hour of study. Most of you are saying C, show me the money. Which means you implicitly understand that if you want somebody to do something that doesn't bring them natural pleasure, one way to get them to do it is to provide them with an artificial source of physical or emotional pleasure. Money, a gold star, a pat on the back, and an attaboy, I'm proud of you. Your correct answers on these two questions say that you know a lot about the behavioral perspective. The behaviorists were a group of psychologists who came after Freud, or during Freud, and they came to prominence because they had a very simple view of human nature. Guess what they thought was most important in the study of psychology? Correct, behavior. They believed that you could understand most human behavior in this formula: stimulus, response, consequence. We are cued or stimulated to a response, to action, by almost every situation around us. I saw the dog lying by the side of the road. That was a stimulus. I responded by helping the dog. Let's say the dog survived. That's a positive consequence. I'm rewarded for my response, and therefore the next time I see a dog laying by the side of the road, I'm more likely to engage in the same response. The positive consequence influences me the next time I encounter the certain stimulus. What if I had seen the dog, the stimulus, I had responded with attempts to render aid, and the dog had died? That's the consequence. That's a punishing consequence. So the next time I see a dog by the side of the road, the stimulus, I might not be so eager to respond because I remember and am influenced by the negative consequence of my response the last time. John Watson was a famous behaviorist who described us as instinct machines or black boxes, that in go the stimulus, out comes the behavior. Doesn't matter what happens inside of the box, doesn't matter what I think about it or how I feel about it. All that matters is the response that comes out and the consequence that follows that response. B.F. Skinner, another famous behaviorist, furthered the field by researching this process within animals. You can turn on a light which signals the rat that if it presses a lever, it will get some food. So you turn on the light, the rat responds, you provide it with food, you can get that rat to press levers all day long. Reward a pigeon for turning around. After you turn on the light, the pigeon sees the light, it responds by turning around, you give it some food, it'll turn around all day long when that light is showing. Put a burning hoop in front of a dolphin, that's the stimulus. They respond by jumping through the hoop, you give them some fish. You can get them to jump through that burning hoop, raise it higher and higher and higher, and make money by filling auditoriums or stands full of people at SeaWorld. B.F. Skinner said the way to alter human behavior is to change the environment in which they're behaving by altering the consequences. Start rewarding people for negative behavior, they'll engage in more negative behavior. Start punishing them for negative behavior, they will cease their negative behavior, according to the behaviorists. The problem with that is they left out the notion of free will, or they didn't have a very good explanation for why some people will choose to engage in behavior that they know will be punished, despite the punishment. Human beings are remarkably able to behave in ways that seem to be counter to their better interests. Why do people use drugs? They know there's going to be a heavy consequence down the line. We use drugs because we have free will, and we can choose sometimes to engage in behaviors that will bring about our downfall. Likewise, we can choose to behave in ways that are incredibly brave because we know that there could be potential consequences. People join the military, go into dangerous situations because they have free will and believe that it's right, even if it can potentially result in loss of life. That was a problem with the behaviorists, and so we had other schools of thought that emerged related to those problems. I always think this quote is interesting that came from B.F. Skinner. I did not direct my life. I didn't design it. I never made decisions. Things always came up and made them for me. That's what life is. He said it, and I know that he believed it, but it's not the way I think about my own life. No one's paying me extra to do these videos. I don't have to. No one told me to. But I made the decision, I believe, to go ahead and make them, even though and to remake them because I blew the first opportunity or attempt. To me, nothing really came up and made that decision for me. I feel like I made the decision out of my own free will. It demonstrates that thinking is different across different people, and that's fine. This behaviorists did a great job. Probably the reason you're in school, one, is that you know that there's a reward coming for your hard work, and that's a grade, and there's a reward for good grades, which is a degree and money in the future. You use behaviorism to train your kids, to train your animals. So we still use it. There are some different ways that human beings see human behavior now, or psychologists do, and this comes from, I like to mention this, you know that there's an extra credit portion of the class that's in the instructor office tab on Blackboard. It's a list of movies and books, and one of my very favorite books of all time. It's a very short book. You could read it in about 3 to 4 hours. It's written by a man named Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he was interred in Auschwitz because he was a Jew. And the first half of the book is an eyewitness account of the atrocities that he experienced in Auschwitz. The second half of the book is his psychology of human nature that came out of that book. And one of the basic principles, one of his my favorite quotes of his was this one here: between stimulus and response, there's a space. And he said, in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is where free will exists. I might be stimulated, prompted to behave in a certain way, to provide a certain response, but I get to choose through my free will how I'm going to act in relation to that stimulus, regardless of the consequences. Frankl said that our responses come out of our meaning for life. If I just believe in the basic stimulus response consequence, then the path to happiness that I see as a human being is this one right here. I engage in behaviors that bring me happiness. Frankl said that doesn't work because the path to happiness has to include meaning. I engage in the response here. I engage in choices out of the meaning of life. If the meaning of life for me is to help other people, then my helping other people brings me that happiness, not just engaging in random acts to bring happiness. Happiness comes out of behavior in ways that bring meaning to life, meaning to my life, regardless of the consequences. Helping people is not always a pleasant experience. I often experience no good deed goes unpunished. However, if that's my meaning for life, then when I behave in that way, despite the consequences, I attain a certain level of happiness. And that leads us to the next line of thinking, which is the humanistic perspective. But we're at 10 minutes. I'm going to stop and encourage you to take a break, and I'll be back.